Okay, everyone, we're going to bring our regular school board meeting to order, July 19th, 2011. And Member Grover, would you call roll, please?
Yes, Member Cameron.
Here.
Member Glass.
Present.
I'm here. Member Johnston.
Here.
Member Casper.
Here.
Chair Sligapunko.
Here.
Member Watson.
Here.
Superintendent Foster.
Here.
Deputy Clerk Hansen. Here. Secretary Tebow. Student Rep Marcus John.
Here.
And Student Rep Lindsay Redenbaugh is absent. Madam Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Member Grover. Will everyone rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? Okay, we're ready to get started, and I would like a motion for approval of the agenda, please. So moved. That's moved by Member Watson. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Cameron. Is there any discussion? Member Johnston?
Madam Chair, yes, I did submit the agenda items. I'm not going to bring them up at this time. I just want to, again, make a public notice and for the record here that I did submit items, and I will be submitting those again next month and talking over their inclusion in the agenda then.
Okay, Member Johnston, thank you. Okay, let's vote on this. All those in favor?
Madam Chair?
Oh, Member Glass?
Just one comment. I have a number of items that I'd like to bring up under other or questions if they don't get answered during the meeting. So I'll reserve a few minutes at that time.
Okay, we're going to vote on approving the agenda. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, it carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move into reading and approval of the minutes. The regular school board meeting of June 21st. So moved. Second. That's moved by Member Watson, seconded by Member Cameron. Is there any discussion? Member Johnston?
Yes, I do have some corrections here. Lately I've been not mentioning the small ones, but today I'm going to go through and mention some of the items which I have been not mentioning and trying to be brief in the past. But today I'm going to go through most of the ones that I found. First one is on page 1. The meeting was called to order at 6:40, not 6:30. At 6:30 we did have a presentation that took about 10 minutes, and it's important at least to have the right time when our meetings start. Another item, this is an important item. It's on page 2, about halfway down on the superintendent's report. The last item on that is discussion took place regarding data requests from Member Glass and a letter from a city councilor, not included in the communications. That was from a county commissioner, not a city councilor. And that was submitted as well to Sue Tellerico, and I believe that Superintendent Foster does have a copy of that letter. Items on page 3, Member Grover withheld item 3E, not 1E, and Member Grover later on withheld items 3E again, not 1E. We also have another set of items on page 12. The first 4 items, again, I'm not quite understand why, but these first 4 items are completely out of order over what they were given in the meeting, and it seems like items like these should be in order. The first item, it says Member Johnston, Member Glass, Member Grover, Member Casper. All those are out of order. I said the items are out of order. Out of order means they're not in chronological order. No, Member Grover withheld item 1E, not 1D. And again, the meeting was adjourned at 9:57, not 9:49. Again, some of these items are kind of minor, but I think that as we start a new year, I think we should start getting the small items like this corrected in the minutes so we don't have these corrections continuously. This is every meeting I have many corrections like this. That should not be necessary.
Okay, is there any more discussion on approval of the minutes? We're going to vote on the minutes of the regular school board meeting, June 21st, 2011. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move on to the special school board meeting of June 27th. Can I have a motion to approve? So moved. It's been moved by Member Wasson. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Member Grover. Any discussion? Member Johnston.
Yes. Correction on the first page and the fourth line. The meeting was held on Monday, not Tuesday, June 27th. On page 4, there is a comment, there is a motion on resolution B611-2904, and there's a trailing sentence on that. There said, this says, upon a vote the same was approved 4-3 as follows. That should not be there. That was voted
Member
on
Johnson,
later
the
on.
correction was sent out.
Oh, okay.
And actually, you should have a copy of it too. But it was
I did
sent
get
via
that.
email.
Okay, thank you. I
Yes.
apologize for that.
So the whole thing, we have 2 pages of that were corrected.
Okay. And
Yeah.
correct me if you've got this correction here, since I didn't go that on page 6. There was a mix-up of that vote that we had. And I don't know, was that one of the corrections that were sent out?
No, which are you
Okay,
talking about?
again, we had 2 motions here. One was to postpone a vote on the item until the regular July school board meeting, and that was actually failed 3-4, not 2-5. And the following item was put additional funding up for a vote by referendum. That failed 2-5, not 3-4.
Okay, Member Johnston, who voted how then for that correction, the first one?
The correct first one, the yeas should have, Member Casper voted yea on that one. And on the latter one, Member Casper voted nay. No.
Okay. That's it?
That is.
Okay, is there any more discussion? Oh, Member Cameron?
I'd just like to make a comment. I appreciate Member Johnston going through the minutes and bringing these corrections to our attention. However, in making reference to the employee and not wanting to see corrections, mistakes made, I would prefer that to be said directly to the superintendent and let the superintendent have a discussion with his employee.
Okay.
And not be made public. Sounds to me too much like a reprimand and discipline.
Thank you so much, Member Cameron. Okay, Member Johnston?
A point well taken. Thank you, Member Cameron.
Okay, we're going to vote on minutes of the special school board meeting, June 27th. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. And then we have minutes of the special school board meeting dated Monday, July 11th. Could I have a motion, please?
Second.
Moved by Member Wasson, seconded by Member Cameron. Is there any discussion on those items? Member Johnston?
Madam Chair, yes, on the first column on the right, others present should have been Ivy Foster, Superintendent, not Keith Dixon.
Yeah, I caught that. Thank you. Okay, is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's vote on the minutes of the special school board meeting, July 11th, 2011. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? That carries unanimously. Okay, we're going to move to audience comments. And Member Casper, would you check the list, please? We have one speaker, and I will ask Marcia Stromgren to come to the podium, please. Thank you.
Good evening, board members, and welcome, Ivy, to the Duluth 709 School District. Nice to have you as our new superintendent. In the spring of 2008, I attended my first school board meeting in many years after I received my business property tax statement for the payable taxes of 2009. The 709's portion of the increase was 339% without a voter-approved levy. Promises by Dixon of a mere $9 increase per $140,000 valuation of a home did not include business property nor raw property. Those increases were much more. Grover's promise to oppose the red plan, aptly named I might add, vanished even though he helped craft the language for a petition drive to give the voters a chance to vote. Petitions were collected, but somehow misplaced and delayed in getting to the proper authorities. Private architectural firm was hired to review all schools, but Plan B was discredited by 6 board members, the administration, and media. Lawsuits, legislation, and even petitioning the governor have failed. Meanwhile, Johnson Controls, Dixon, and 5 board members push forward and even approve another $15 million at a special school board meeting that most people didn't even know about. Funny, I've sat here for all these years and I keep hearing the same old thing. Schools are on target, no additional costs, and yet Dixon said in the news media on the 10 o'clock news that these were things the voters requested. I didn't get included in that. What the people wanted. Replacement of one school board member who also made campaign promises for change haven't happened. And the only ones that stand up for the rights of the people, the teachers, and the taxpayers, or students, are Art Johnston and Gary Glass. Meanwhile, the onslaught continues. I watched Dixon tearfully state his reason for stepping down as superintendent was so he could spend time with his grandkids. Now he's taken a one-year interim position close to the cities where his wife is employed. The common thread that continues makes me see red. Lies, deception, and fraud remind me of the children's story, The Emperor's New Clothes. 5 of you board members ought to hang your head in shame.
Okay, there's no more speakers. We'll move right on to reading communications, petitions, and report of the superintendent. So, Dr. Foster, it's your turn. Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
How's everyone?
Good.
I want to thank you for the opportunity to serve as your superintendent. This is my first regular board meeting of the year, and I'm excited about the opportunities. The young lady who just spoke at the microphone, Marcia, what's the last name?
Marcia Stromgren.
Marcia Strongman. I'd like to speak with you at the end of the board meeting and maybe discuss in further detail your concerns and issues, and perhaps we can work collaboratively with the school board and the community to address some of your concerns as well as the community. I'm excited about being here. The last couple of weeks I've spent a lot of hours with many people, particularly the cabinet administrators, trying to go through the learning curve. I spent an awful lot of time with both of the bills. Bill Hanson. Bill has given me a crash course in Finance 101 for the school district, and we're looking at finances as it relates to the long-range facilities plan, looking at finances to support our teaching and learning in our school district, and we hope to find some opportunities to meet the needs of the school district. Spent significant amount of time with the other Bill Grosselin, and we've been looking at curriculum, program opportunities, any number of things to improve teaching and learning in the classroom as well as programs. I've met with all of the school board members. As a group, we've had a couple of meetings since I've been here for 2 years, or 2 weeks. It feels like, the last 2 weeks feels like 2 years. It's been a lot of meetings, a lot of hours, a lot of information. But I'm excited. I think the opportunities are there for us to move forward collectively together. I've had an opportunity to spend some time with the Vote Yes committee as we look forward and look at the challenges as we tend to look to trying to pass a new referendum to service our schools and students and programs. Oh gosh, what else? I've also spent time with our HR directors, looking at staffing levels, class sizes. I got to admit to you, I'm very concerned about what I'm seeing preliminarily, and so we'll have some challenges to lower those class sizes, board and community. We want to certainly provide a very good quality education to our children, and large class sizes makes it very difficult for us to do that. So I'm hoping we can all focus on our commonality, which is what's in the best interest of our students, and perhaps allay some of our differences and do what's best for students and the school district. Board, I want to thank you very much for your support and your encouragement in selecting me as your new superintendent, and I look forward to working with each and every one of you as we move forward to build Duluth Public Schools to the next level. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. We are thrilled to have you here. Your first meeting. It's great. All right. We're going to move right into the report of standing committees. And the first is the Education Committee report. Member Wasson, if you would take that away.
This is the Education Committee report for July. Item number 2 were informational items. There were grant applications. Action item, we had a great presentation by the Lake Superior Swim Club. This is exactly what the board has been talking about, doing collaborations with the community in using our schools together to benefit our entire community. So they have come up with a really dynamic plan for that. We have a resolution of the grant awards. I think I'll move on and take that in a minute. Item C was access to internet, and item D was a new policy 5093, restrictive procedure plans for special ed students. E, policy 6140.10, co-curricular activities participation fees. There was a slight increase. F was policy 5085, student discipline policy. That's for the second reading. Item G is new policy 5090, use of cell phones. This is also a second reading. We had diplomas. There are 5 we'd like to congratulate and on their accomplishment. Item I was a certificate of attendance. Congratulations and thank you for joining us. And then J is a list of all of the graduates from our June graduation. Let's go ahead and I will move the Education Committee report, holding off the resolution at this point.
Okay, thank you, Member Wasson. Is there a second? Okay, seconded by Member Casper. Is there any discussion on the whole education report except for the resolution? Member Casper.
Yes, 3A1.
3A1. Okay, is there anything else? Member Glass?
The same.
Let's see. Okay, same one. Okay, go ahead, Member Casper.
All right, I want to just recognize the Lake Superior Swim Club for their their efforts. As Member Wasson had mentioned, it's a wonderful example of how we'd like to see our buildings utilized into the future. And an organization like this coming forward to offer that as that opportunity will certainly be of benefit to our entire community and offer us greater utilization of these resources that we have. I also want to mention that I spoke, matter of fact, just today, with the director of community ed, and he too is very supportive of this effort and is very comfortable with what they're talking about, and it's an exciting time for us to move these into the future and see this kind of opportunity for our kids and our community. So,
Okay, thank you, Member Casper. Member Glass, you question?
Yes, I would like to also say that it was an impressive proposal that this group was concerning the use of the facilities, but I would like to see a little more detail on their offer to share the resources in the future to help set or to pay for some of the costs that we'll be incurring to run the very expensive 8-lane pools, and to make sure that the district keeps in mind that not only do we have the responsibility to educate children that everyone learns to swim, but we also have the opportunity in the future to grow this resource very substantially, not only with our new buildings, but with some of our older buildings that have usable pools and could be utilized to build an even larger program. But one at which that will bear some return in actual cash back to the district. So I'd like to make sure we don't lose track of that particular feature.
Member Casper?
I have one more thing. It's regarding the graduation. It was unfortunate that 2 of our high school classes graduated the same night, so those of us board members who would have liked to have attended, all 3 were sort of caught in a dilemma of which ones could we attend and be present at. So, and I understand it was sort of a one-time thing because with next year with 2 high schools formally, we won't see that, but my hope is that we're very cognizant of that in the future. I also want to recognize a milestone in my life as a parent. We have milestones that come before us, our children being born, our children getting on the bus for the first day of school, and our children graduating from high school. And it was such an honor for me to not only see my son graduate, but to also hand him his diploma the night of graduation from East High School. So it's just one of those things that I probably will remember in the same context as those other things I mentioned. So I guess it's sort of a membership has its privileges kind of thing, and it was very nice to be there to be a part of that. So thank you.
Okay. Member Grover?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to piggyback on Member Casper's comments, it was actually a little bit worse than 2 high schools on one night. It was actually 3 on one night because the ALC Unity program was that same evening also. And I'm just hoping next year and in future years we'll have 3 separate nights, because attending as many as you're able to is certainly gratifying as a board member. So. And I can also, it's getting to be a little bit in the hazy reaches of my mind, but I can remember the delight of handing my own child her diploma, her 2 of them actually. So I share in that experience. It's you can't beat it really. So.
Thank you, Member Grover, and I know Member Wasson has been able to hand all 3 of her children their diplomas. That was really neat for me too this year. First time. So anyway, all right, we're going to vote on the entire education report except for the resolution. So all those in favor of the education report, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. And Member Wasson, can you finish with the resolution, please?
The acceptance of grants, it's found on page 24. Acceptance of grants award to Duluth Public Schools. Minnesota State Statute 465.03 requires the school district to accept grants by resolution, and so on. The Ordine Foundation for $40,000. We thank them. Resolution E711-22912. submitted July 12th, 2011.
Should that date be, I didn't notice that, but should that date be
Oh,
tonight, the 19th?
Yeah,
So just want to make sure.
July 19th, sorry.
Okay. It's been moved by Member Wasson. Is there a second? Seconded by Member Casper. Is there any discussion? Member Casper?
Very briefly, and I know we've talked about this over the last year or so, and I'm sure prior to my time on the board, that discussion about the potential of somewhere down the road hiring a professional grant writer to be working with the district that may potentially help offset some of those costs and those issues that we're dealing with today. So my hope is that we look at that. Oftentimes we hear of organizations that are able to do that and to justify beyond the expense or the cost of having that person on staff with the grant writing and the opportunity that they have to bring that money into the district. So.
Okay, thank you, Member Casper. Dr. Foster, had your light on.
Yes. Board Member Casper, one of the things that we'll be doing this year, when we've started the process, is we're reviewing and assessing all of our programs and operations, looking for opportunities not only to reallocate and restructure some of our expenditures. We've talked about a number of things that we've done in the past. I'll be coming to the board with some recommendations. One of those opportunities would be to either contract a part-time grant writer that might be able to look for regular state and federal grants, but competitive grant opportunities also, or perhaps even partnering with neighboring schools and or businesses to share those services of a grant writer. So,
Thank you.
Right, Member Cameron.
I just wanted to comment that I'm glad you brought up Superintendent Foster sharing grant writers, but we also can look at those graduate students who are required to do internships, and we have excellent grant writers at the University of Minnesota Duluth, as well as the other neighboring colleges and universities.
I will be asking for those names.
Okay, is there anything else? Okay, we're ready to vote on the resolution 711-22912. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. All right, that's it for the education report. We're going to move right into the HR report. Member Cameron, if you would do that, please. Thank you.
This is the Human Resources Committee report for Tuesday, July 19th. The first item is staffing reports, which are all action items under certified appointments. There are 4. There are 47 certified co-curriculars. There are 41 certified extensions, 1 certified leave, 1 certified permanent decrease, and there are 69 certified summer schools, 4 certified temporary increases, and for non-certified, there are 2 non-certified appointments, 21 non-certified demotions, 23 non-certified extensions, 4 non-certified layoffs, 4 non-certified leaves, 10 non-certified permanent decreases, 10 non-certified permanent increases, 3 non-certified promotions, 1 non-certified resignation, 1 non-certified retirement, and there are 58 non-certified summer schools, 1 non-certified temporary decrease, and 1 non-certified temporary increase. I'm going to move on to the other action items, which is 2A through E. And the first one is an individual employment agreement for Sarah Dixon and the Minnesota Alliance with Youth. And I'd like to move approval of that.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved by Member Cameron, seconded by Member Wasson. Is there any discussion on that first contract? Member Johnston?
Yes, these questions will refer all to A, B, and C, and D. We had this discussion at the committee meeting, but when I read over these again, I don't quite understand this. These 4 contracts are about $200,000. And I thought I was given the impression that these weren't really employees, but yet the contract clearly says these people are employees and we, the district, are the employer. So again, please explain this again, Tim. There's something I don't quite get with this, and I think you explained it good, but please do that again.
The district plays a fiduciary type role with this organization. So what they do is they do run their employees through our payroll system and through our HR system. In return, there are some costs that are offset by the organization for us doing this. So it is not a cost to the school district. It is cost neutral. On these increases, they have their own board that approved, first it would be Sarah's contract, who is the director, and then Sarah approved the other three moving along. But we have just a fiduciary role in terms of running the payroll through our area and some services, support services.
Where does that money then come from that makes up for it? You said it's more of a pass-through thing. Well, where does this money come from then?
The source of the money is their own funding stream from grants and federal monies that is part of their budget. So it's a totally separate item, but as Tim said, it's because we're the fiscal agent, their monies run through us in a fiduciary capacity, and as a result, then we need to bring items like this to the board to gain your approval so we can run them through our payroll system. And again, they've already acted on this within their own board.
Okay. Now, one time did we accept money from them as a grant then, like we just did in some of these other organizations? Is that what you mean?
The money comes to us essentially with their name on it, and again, we work it through our financial system that way.
Okay, but we accepted that. We as a board, we have to accept grants like we just did, so we accepted that at one time too, that grant from this organization.
I believe we have, yes.
Thank you.
Member Glass?
Yes, I thought this was a very strange arrangement when the wife of the superintendent at that time had her office next to him, and that made some sense that this organization would basically follow those two. But when she now is not going to be housed in this building and is down in the cities, and the superintendent's taking another job at another school district, it doesn't seem to me that we should be housing people that we don't even see. Now, do you have a different perception of how this is going to work? Is this in fact just a convenience that you're taking for granted that they're doing work? We're not having to monitor the hours. We're not having to do any of the normal things that an employer would do for an employee. And then secondly, the importance that we got audited on when they do screening of people and they do the checks that are required. Are they going to do those checks, or are we going to do the checks?
Like I had mentioned before, this is a cost neutral, but I think we could look at it this way as a district. While we support some of those services in a cost neutral factor, it allows us to maintain employees that we might not otherwise have. Now, I'm saying that rather loosely, but in essence, we have a broader spectrum of people that we support in a cost neutral factor to the district. So it does keep our base of employment somewhat larger. Now, in terms of the background checks and that, we do run our regular background checks through these individuals, but they also have another tier that they run through. So these employees that they have within their unit essentially have two background checks up to a higher degree than what the district even does.
Okay. So who in the district actually supervises these people?
In the district, well, the responsibility for this group falls under Sarah Dixon and her direct reports, as well as they do have a support staff located within this building.
But who supervises her to make sure that she's doing her job?
Her board.
Her board. So no one here supervises her and has any contact?
That would be correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, we're going to go ahead and approve the letter A, the approval of Sarah Dixon individual contract. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, that carries 6-1 with Member Glass voting against it. Okay, Member Cameron?
Okay, 2B is the approval of the individual contract for Renee Anderson and Minnesota Alliance with Youth.
Okay, that's been moved by Member Cameron. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, seconded by Member Wasson. Is there any discussion on this contract of Renee Anderson? Okay, let's vote on it then. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, that's 6-1 again with, I'm sorry, Member Johnson? Member Johnston wants to abstain, so Member Glass votes against it also. Okay, Member Cameron?
2C is the individual contract for Stephanie Paulman and Minnesota Alliance with Youth, and I move that as well for approval.
Second.
It's been moved by Member Cameron, seconded by Member Wasson. Is there any discussion? Okay, we'll vote on that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Okay, that's 6-1 again with Member Glass voting, and I guess 5-1, and Member Johnston voting, or not voting. Okay, Member Cameron?
And 2D is the individual contract from Melissa Burwell and the Minnesota Alliance with Youth, and I move that for approval as well.
Okay. It's moved by Member Cameron, seconded by Member Wasson. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, let's go ahead and vote on that. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that carries. Are you abstaining too? Okay, so it's 5-1, and Member Glass votes against it, and Member Johnson abstaining. Okay, Member Cameron?
2E is a new position, the climate coordinator, and I move this for approval as well.
Okay, that's been moved by Member Cameron. Is there a second? Second. Okay, that's been seconded by Member Casper, it's climate coordinator. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, let's vote on the new position. Oh, Member Casper.
At our committee meeting, we talked about potentially changing that title with those concerns. Are we still looking at that? Is that because there was concern, it sounded like the environment or whatever happened to be so just wanted to know if we've done any further follow-up with that, or if this is now a title that is set in stone because we're voting on it at this time. So.
Yeah, my impression during the discussion at that time is we considered that climate was somewhat a figure of speech as it relates to, you know, environmental or the various things that happen within a school day, that type of atmosphere versus clouds and rain. It did continue on with that title of climate. So.
Student Representative John?
Yes, I was just wondering for this occupation, is this a district-wide, just one individual? Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for weighing in, too. Okay, we're going to vote on this new position, climate coordinator. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Okay, Member Cameron, if you would continue.
Okay, there are no informational items at this time, and there are no future HR items at this time. And so, Madam Chair, I'd like to move the remaining HR committee report.
Thank you. It's been moved by Member Cameron. Is there a second? Second. Okay, seconded by Member Wasson. Is there a discussion? Member Johnston.
Madam Chair, we had quite a discussion on this. I just want to mention it in public here very briefly that when this meeting was going on, during the business meeting, there was a bumping meeting going on for the paras at the time, and I'd had a lot of calls, and the results of that will be next week or next month, and it appears we're going to have about, I think if I remember correct, somewhere around 20 people probably laid off again. So again, people that are wondering what happened, that will be next month.
Okay, thank you, Member Johnson. I just want to make one quick comment too when we were talking about some of the extensions through the summer, just when we're looking at budget cuts, you know, it's hard to see some of this, so I'm just nervous with the state approving it looks like they're going to a 40% 60 shift, so just, Dr. Foster.
Just once again, I'll reiterate, this will be a year of reviewing, assessing all of our programs and services as we begin to focus on a primary effort towards improving and extending our programs, lowering class sizes, hiring more teachers and support staff. All things are on the table. We'll be reviewing, assessing, and aligning them towards those particular efforts that have primary impact on improving student achievement, lowering the achievement gap. We're looking to increasing graduation rates as well as reducing dropout rates. And those being our primary foci with regards to our efforts to move forward. We'll be looking at all of our activities, support and/or programs that are available and looking for opportunities to streamline things as best as we can, work more efficiently and effectively in lowering our expenditures in an effort to address a number of things that you've talked about here today. So, and looking at contracts, services, things of that nature are certainly on the table. We'll be looking at those things, and as we go through the year, bringing it back to the board, our staff and the public also. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Member Cameron.
So before those, the parents who are supposed to be laid off, before that's made final, can we have a meeting to discuss that and before it's finalized and the possibility of reallocating dollars so that we better meet the needs of our students? And looking at contracts and job descriptions the way we talked about at the HR committee meeting?
I certainly would encourage any conversation with regards to that, but I will caution the board that you've got a budget timeline, and any kind of, how can I say this, hesitations in that process tends to bring some uncertainty to the staff as they move forward. So whatever it is that we might consider, we should do it sooner than later. As staff members are gearing up and making plans for this next year as we speak. So yes, I would say I would be open to any conversations that you have with regards to the budget.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Okay, we're ready to vote on the entire Human Resources report except for the individual action items which we've already voted on. So all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. All right, that is the HR report. We're going to move right on to the Business Committee report. Member Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Section 1 is the recurring monthly financial reports, which we see every month, with the exception of the weighted average daily membership or student enrollment projections, which are suspended until October. There is one bid, 2A1, Eastern High School bid package number 7. We received, was it in the mail on for the weekend packet that we got this? There are three different contracts totaling $1.242 million. Recommendation is for approval. There's an RFP, which is B1, or 2B1, HVAC, that's heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, testing and balancing at the Eastern Middle School. Recommendation is to approve this agreement with TD Test and Balance, estimated value $51,100. On the top of page 2, 4A is a contract for workers' comp, and we got this information at our places this evening as well as via email. I believe it was today or yesterday. I'm not sure. I think it was today. It might have been yesterday. Anyway, we have it in front of us this evening. The second contract is with True North AmeriCorps, partner site agreement and addendum. And this is for the 2011-12 school year, and the recommendation is to authorize the assistant superintendent and each building principal to complete and sign these partner site agreement addenda for next school year. The third and last contract is a health and safety training contract recommendation is to approve entering into a contract with Apex Online Development LLC for consulting services relating to web-based safety training. We have a number of change orders in 4B at Denfeld, Laura Mack, Lester Park, and Piedmont School. Incidentally, going back to the workers' comp, I didn't elaborate on that at all because I assume we'll be having a little discussion, and that item we will, in fact, I'll put my name down for pulling that item, 4A1. Okay, if I can be presumptuous there, Madam Chair. Thank you. And we have change orders also in addition to Denfeld at Laura MacArthur, Lester Park, and Piedmont Elementary Schools. We have 3 resolutions which we'll take separately on 5A, B, and C. And then section 6, is the informational items, expenditure contracts and revenue contracts signed by the superintendent, in some cases Superintendent Dixon, and I would guess maybe all of them at this point, Superintendent Dixon or Mr. Hanson of Business Services. And facilities management reports, Johnson Controls Facilities Plan Status Report, change orders not requiring board approval, contract signed in relation to the long-range plan as an informational item, and we had an update on the state budget situation given by Mr. Hanson and Mr. LeBlanc at the Business Committee, and then the last item is the quarterly report of grants and donations. Madam Chair, do you want me to move the resolutions first, or?
Let's do the resolutions.
Okay.
That's a great idea.
The first resolution is 5A. It's found on page 73. And this is the annual resolution for membership in the Minnesota State High School League. This will be for 2011 and 2012. I will move resolution B711-2911, dated July 19th, 2011.
Thank you, Member Grover. Seconded by Member Wasson. Is there any discussion? Member Johnston?
Madam Chair, is there a cost to this membership?
If I may, Madam Chair?
Go ahead.
There is, but I don't know exactly what it is.
We were going to give the same answer. We don't know the amount off the top of our head, but there is a slight cost to it.
I wonder if you can you ballpark it?
Every school district.
100,000, 10,000, and I don't have a clue.
Less than 20 per site.
Less than 20,000?
Yes.
Okay. If you could, maybe get that for me in the future. Thanks.
Okay, Member Glass.
Yes, my questions about costs also. What happened to that schedule of cost increases that we talked about at the Business Committee meeting? Is that part of this meeting today, do you know? For a student pupil cost for the different sports? What was it part of? What was the answer?
Mr. Glass, I believe that's in the Education Committee report. There's a resolution in there, or a policy on change. For example, hockey's going from, I believe,
Sure.
450 to 500. That's in the...
Someone was going to get the total costs of that schedule for present. And because it does relate to this membership in the high school
We can distribute that to you in the mail this week.
They will be interested in what the cost was before our increases, and then what you expect the increases to bring in. Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else? I think we'll vote on this resolution 7-11-2911. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Continue, Member Grover.
Second resolution is found on page 74, and it's relating to authorized student activity bank account signers. Resolved by the board that as of July 1st, 2011, all previously approved student activity bank account signers shall be removed as authorized account signers. Be it further resolved that the attached list of signers are authorized signers as of 7/1/11. All transactions require the signature of at least 2 authorized account signers. Move resolution B711-2913, July 19th, 2011.
Thank you, Member Grover.
Second.
Seconded by Member Wasson. Is there any discussion on these changes? Member Glass.
Yes, can you tell us the last time that these accounts were audited? And why isn't it, or if it is a part of the annual audit, that's interesting, but if it isn't, why?
The student activity counts are part of the overall district financial statement, so annually they do get audited. They don't necessarily get looked at each year at any particular school, but they are audited on an annual basis, and they're part of the overall district financial statements.
So they wouldn't necessarily get an audit every year, but they would, but only as a part of the financial statement?
That's correct.
Okay, so at any point do you do a detailed audit of this account?
Recently, the finance department did an internal review on a few of the district student activity accounts, but no, we haven't had a formal, we in finance haven't formally gone in and did complete big audits on any of one of them.
Ever?
Oh yeah, they're audited. Sometimes a school will be audited by our external auditor as well as in-house.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Okay, any other discussion? Seeing none, let's vote on this resolution B 7-11-2913. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Member Grover?
Final resolution is adopting the district's health, safety, and environmental management program for 2011-2012. The purpose of this program is to ensure that the district provides a safe and healthy work and learning environment for its employees and students. I move resolution B 7-11-2902, dated July 19th, 2011.
Thank you, Member Grover.
Second.
Seconded by Member Watson. Any discussion, Member Casper?
Just real briefly, it says the board will ensure that appropriate funding and resources are available to implement and maintain compliance with federal, state, local government, and so on. So recognizing that we're in very tight financial situation, is there a cost to this, or a substantial cost to this, or is this going to be done in-house with existing staff?
Member Casper, members of the board, I think the answer is yes to both. There is cost, and however, there is a financial revenue that is part of the district's levy specific for health and safety, environmental management, and so part of our annual levy includes funding for that, which is categorical specifically for this purpose, and we believe is adequate as we've applied for it this year and intend to levy, and as it has been in the past. We do use existing in-house staff. We have a coordinator of health, safety, environmental management, Kurt Conrad. He is funded from that same source of revenue, his salary is. And then there are additional dollars to support the programs, including one of the action items you have tonight for the safety training, online safety training program. That is a piece of what is required in order to comply with those same rules and regulations that you referenced.
So there is a funding stream to pay for this. In essence, it's not taking money out of the classroom.
It's separate from the general fund. That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Member Casper. Member Johnston?
Yeah, kind of similar, Mr. Leiter, about what's the budget of this program? Just wondering what the cost is. Yeah, it's made up of both state aid and local levy, and it's around $337,000. Thank you.
Member Glass?
Yes, we had a discussion on the OSHA's participation generally, and then the questions came up as to how does OSHA interact with your program? And is there active monitoring by OSHA, or could you expand a little bit on whether or not you use the OSHA training system or whatever?
Member Glass, members of the board, at this time there's considerable OSHA consultation involvement as it relates to our construction projects that are ongoing throughout the district. We don't routinely use the OSHA consultation services as part of our normal school operations, but it certainly is as part of construction. We work with OSHA indirectly where we have questions regarding our compliance and interpretation of standards, but typically only when those circumstances arise.
Member Glass, members of the board, I can add to what Mr. Leiter said. We did have a discussion, as you noted, at the business committee meeting, and I did give some examples of what I'd call targeted training aspects that we hope to address through these resources, back injuries and that type of thing. What I was refreshed on later when I was talking to Kurt Conrad are the required training items that we do, again, through the item that you're referring to, and those relate to just a couple of examples: bloodborne pathogens, how to deal with fluids and that type of thing, and the employee right to know in terms of material safety data sheets and hazardous materials in the workplace and that type of thing. And those are required training elements for certain of our employees, depending on the areas that they work in and that type of thing, and so that's addressed as part of this as well.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, any more discussion? Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote on Resolution B711-2902. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. Okay, Member Grover.
Madam Chair, I move the remainder of the business committee report.
Thank you, Member Grover. Is there a second? Second. Seconded by Member Casper. Is there any discussion besides, we have 4A1 already with Member Grover. Well, Member Johnston?
1B.
1B. Okay.
2B.
2B.
2B1.
2B1.
4A1.
Yeah, that's already been pulled.
4A2, I'd like to have a separate vote on that.
A2.
And 4A3, a separate vote.
4A3. Right. Let's see. Okay, is that it, Member Johnston?
No, 4B, all of 4B, which is 1 through 4, all of 4B, 1 through 4. And 6A, 6E.
Which, 6 what?
6E.
B.
6F. And 6H.
Okay, is that it? Okay, Member Casper.
6D.
D or B?
D.
That's it? Let's see. We'll go back to 1B. Member Johnston.
Yes, so that is concerning. It's not in the book here, but that's the payment of claims packet, which I get. I think it's on the board book. And I have a request here, or something maybe we can talk it over later with Dr. Ivy. There's been a lot of discussion on this, particularly after the last special meeting, about accountability on where is money going. And these reports are generated, and I'd like to have a request that these reports be given to me, not hard copy, but in an actual digital format, such as Excel, that I can actually use. And I could certainly talk in more detail about that in the future here, what I want.
Can we, after the meeting, maybe sit down and kind of be more specific about what you're looking for, and we can...
Yes, thank you.
Member Casper?
Yes, I didn't ask for this because Member Johnston had already. I generally look at this rather leafing through it, just see if things sort of stand out to me as a bit odd. And one that seems a bit odd to me that I'd maybe like to gain a better understanding of, and it's also been pointed out to me, contract or payment to a service that the district received from, let's see if I can find it here, Dave St. Germain. And it looks like it's about $80,000, and it was approved $2,500 to $4,000 at a time. I'm looking for what that service was and what are our parameters. I've been under the impression that a contract of that size should come before the board, and I might be totally wrong on that. So I'm looking for some answers and some explanation on that, and how we handle those things, and also what that service was that we spent $80,000 on. So.
It's staff development training efforts for employees. In terms of a contract, I'd have to look at that and review it. Pull that out of the file or look for it. So I can get you more information on that if that's okay. Or
okay. So we actually went out for bid on that and received a price and created a contract for that.
Yeah, I think that falls under professional service. So you're really buying the skill set of the person, and you want to be careful that you're getting what you're looking for there, and they're addressing the points that you desire. So the answer is not necessarily, but I can provide more information on what actually happened with that.
So can you explain then why we see these incremental payments, $2,500, $4,400, $2,200, separate, in essence, I guess, separate bills? And also, did that staff development occur district-wide, or was that specific to one site or to one issue?
There were, I believe, multiple sites involved, certainly, and also multiple sessions within each site. So that's where you get several bills of approximately the same size, based again on multiple sessions within the site and multiple sites at the same time. But we can lay those dates out for you and give you more detail on that too.
And in theory, this person that we just approved a job description for and a title for our climate coordinator, would they potentially have similar training that would maybe offset some of those costs into the future?
Potentially. I'm not that as familiar with the program as probably others are. So I think that potentially there could be some overlap there, but again, I'm assuming that this individual is bringing some things to the table that individuals in-house don't have.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Certainly, we can get pool contract for services, and that contract for services should give greater detail. But I think we might be talking about two different types of services. I assume with Dave St. Germain, he was a professional consultant who was providing professional development services throughout the district in a particular area, such as differentiated instruction or the use of data, something specific to those services. I would also assume that the contract would come before the board that basically outlines what those services might be and the cost associated. In the details, that would be something that you would find perhaps developed by the superintendent and or the assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction, gearing up or directing the type of training that's needed across the district, until we can have conversation and find the detail with regards to what services were provided for you, the costs that are incurred. In some cases, when you are hiring a consultant, the consultant fee not only includes the cost for providing the professional service in terms of instruction, but travel costs and other associated fees also. And so we will do some research and come back to you with the details.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Member Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for that response, Dr. Foster. I just, excuse me, I just wanted to reinforce or piggyback on to Member Casper's concerns. There was actually earlier this current school year, I'm not sure, seeing this item in the current monthly report led me to look back earlier in this past school year, and I think it was the November report or the report of November claims paid. There was another $40,000 for the same contractor, and I have heard, I haven't verified it with my own eyes, but I have heard that over the last several years there was substantially more also to this same individual contractor. So I think we do need to get some detail on that, and I don't want to use the term shine the light because that implies some kind of wrongdoing, which I'm not doing, but some clarification for the board, I guess, would be in order.
Absolutely. And as I said to you before, board, to the general community, one of the things that we'll be doing this year is looking for those kinds of opportunities. We've got specialists in our own, what would you say, our own choir stands. We have teachers, administrators, people in the community, family support members who have expertise. And one of the things we want to do is look at those opportunities to recapture some of this type of funds to put back into the classroom and develop internal capacity utilizing our own specialists, our teachers, support staff, administrators, to provide that type of training. So we see this as an opportunity also. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Member Glass.
Yes, thank you. I'm the usual complainer of this particular item, and want to note that this May was another $18,700,000 month, of which taxpayer money was spent, of which then Johnson Controls got more than $500,000, and then we also paid more than $14,000 to the local newspaper, and the attorneys got an additional $30,000 for a variety of tasks. I did note a couple of things that I wanted to ask specific questions on. Bossart Corporation, was my understanding that they're a contractor for JCI as one of the people that monitor our construction. Why do we pay them separately?
Member Glass, part of our construction management agreements with JCI includes reimbursable expenses. Both Krause Anderson and Bossart provide some reimbursable expenses that we pay directly to them. Examples are heat, temporary power, a construction trailer that is part of a reimbursable service where those trailers are required, and there are other examples that are listed in our contract agreement. And so that would be the case where there are direct payments to the construction management companies for certain reimbursable expenses.
But most of the costs would be paid by Johnson Controls?
As it relates to the fee for the services, yes.
Okay, thank you. And then I also noted quite a large expense in May for the Voyager Bus Company, more than $500,000. Is that typical for when we pay Voyagers, or did we have extra expense this last year that would push our budget into the red? Do any recall whether we have extra expense in May for Voyager to the tune of $213,000, $186,000, another $106,000?
I'm not aware of any unique circumstances there. They've been as board members know, we do about a third of the busing ourselves and two-thirds of the busing within the district through our contractor, who is Voyager, and I'm not aware of any unique charges. There might be a timing difference where one bill from a prior month lapsed into this month. I'd have to look at it to see, but I'm not aware of any unique circumstances.
Okay, well, it just made that this large an expense did come to mind. I also did notice the David St. Germain item after it was pointed out by Member Casper, and I wrote a memo to the finance director. Did you get my memo? My request to spell those things out?
Yes, and I referred it to the superintendent.
Okay, very good. I assume that you're working on it. Thank you.
Oh, Member Johnston?
Madam Chair, I just realized that I wanted to pull out 2A1, so it looks like they may be done with the other topics, so just add that when we get to that.
Okay, so we're going to move on, and now we have 2A1. Member Johnston?
Yeah, that's the about $1.2 million bids on East. A question, Mr. Leiter, when at the special meeting here we had a couple weeks ago, we were handed out a summary cost status report, and on that it showed East High School having a $3.6 million increase. This is its $1.2 million, and I'm just wondering where that fits. Is this part of the budget increase? Is this part of what would this have been awarded whether or not we had that special meeting? And I'm just wondering where this fits in that.
Member Johnson, members of the board, I think this is a good example relative to, I think, a response in general and the $15.4 million. The two-part to your question, I guess, in response. This contract probably would not have been recommended without that discussion and action by the school board. But these are project scope that were in our original, and certainly not all of this is considered part of the overage. I think there was, if we looked at overall in that project, some of the costs in many categories exceeded what was estimated, and some of the undiscovered conditions of additional asbestos costs, for example. I don't know if that answers your question completely.
Not quite. Say, for example, 3 contracts. One is general carpentering, and that must have been part of the original contract. And before you answer that, the greenhouse, that was also part of the original contract, was it not?
Correct.
And the parking lot, I'm assuming, was also part of the original contract.
Yes, all 3 of these items. The general carpentry is primarily related to a concession building and ticket booths associated with the stadium field. There was a line item in the original scope of the project for a stadium, and this is one of the last components of that particular line item. The greenhouse was part of the schematic design and the working drawings approved by the school board. Yet you could, I don't have the breakdown here, but relative to original estimates, I think some of these are higher and some of them are lower than what were originally estimated. And until you actually get the bids, you don't know whether or not your estimates are going to satisfy that.
Is it fair to assume then this $3.6 million is yet to come? $3.6 million, which was part of the $15.4 million passed 2 weeks ago in the special board meeting?
There are some additional bids remaining, but quite a bit of the work is being done through proposal requests, which result ultimately in change orders. We have some work where we're finishing up some scope of work related to the project Lead the Way, some construction technology work, and there's some other work as well.
Okay. I do have more questions, but we'll bring it up on another item here.
Okay, we're going to move on to 2B1, and that was Member Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, we brought this up, and unfortunately, or fortunately, Mr. Leiter, you weren't at our business meeting, but I'm going to ask some of the same questions. Again, this is to do with balancing, which has to do with the heating, ventilation, air conditioning, and the discussion that I had, which we couldn't answer, but I think is quite important, is that what happened to the leads and I went back and did a little more research on this, and that the review and comment to the Department of Education back in 2007 indicated that we would follow leads. Two handouts that we've had that I have just happen to have collected, and which I can show you as well, indicate not only are we following leads, we will be following lead silver in all of our buildings. And that was an information thing that was handed out over the last couple of years. But yet, when I go on the website currently, leads is only mentioned in one building, and that's the Middle Western School. And now, we had this discussion, and I'm not advocating necessarily that we go to do a LEEDS certification because of the expense. I don't think we get a big bang for the buck. But originally the red plan was developed under the understanding that we were going to be an environmental leader, saving energy, and LEEDS, of course, is not just saving energy, it's using local materials, using the ash and the concrete, all those kind of things. Has any of those other items been part of these contracts, say for, just the non-HVAC items, were they part of the contracts that were let?
Member Johnson, members of the board, the long-range plan contemplated from the beginning an effort to construct our buildings consistent with the LEED standards, and specifically the LEED Silver, as you indicated, Member Johnston. There was a point in time where we were communicating to the board and were intending to actually pursue the full certification for a number of our projects. The Western Middle School, as you indicated, I believe our elementary schools, the brand new ones, and then I think possibly also the Eastern High School, because of the significant level of renovation there, allowed us to potentially have the points required for certification. I think last July, when the superintendent provided an update to the school board, there was part of that budget discussion, a line item in that presentation that indicated that the cost of the certification was not going to be pursued. It was somewhere between $350,000 and $400,000 to actually receive those certifications, and felt that performing to the LEED standards, which are specifications, I think if you looked into them for the individual projects with contractors, you would see considerable language referencing LEED standards, or specifically with the intent that the approach to the construction and materials would allow us to have completed the application papers and documentation required to get that certification. So that is the status right now. Our projects and our specifications were designed in order to come as close as possible to those LEED standards for silver certification, but we are not pursuing the actual cost and the certificates itself and record.
Okay, just another clarification on the contracts can get quite LEEDS loaded. You said the contracts were LEEDS loaded, I'm calling it. So does that mean that we are buying, say for example, local materials using fly ash and the concrete? That's two examples that LEEDS is quite big on.
And I can't answer specifically to those two items, Member Johnston, but I know that there was significant language in our specifications that would allow us to qualify for points. As I've learned and understand the LEED certification process, there are many different ways to get and gain points relative to those environmental considerations. And we identified as many as we can relative to recycled materials, the type of materials, packaging that construction materials come together, the types of concrete, energy efficiency of equipment and lighting and HVAC equipment. So there was, again, considerable consideration given to those categories of environmental concern, and it was written into those specifications.
Okay, and again, I think that we can't afford, I don't think it's a good bang for the buck, as you said. I think it was a good choice here not to go with that LEED certification. But why I'm bringing this up is that this added that much to the original contract. Everybody knows that LEEDs is expensive, not only as the certification, but the actual complying with, say, for example, buying local materials. You're buying more expensive materials rather than buying nationally available materials, those kind of things, recycled carpeting, etc. Low VOC things are very, very expensive. And so, again, not following, I'm not saying we should have followed the LEEDs, although it may make some people upset, but it seems like we should have saved a lot of money by not following LEEDs. And here 2 weeks ago, we raised our contract price by $15 million rather than decreasing it by this $400,000 as a minimum, which we should have saved by not going with the LEEDs. And I don't, that's where I'm going here, is why did that happen? That's a more rhetorical question. We can talk more about that later, so I'll leave it at that at this point.
Okay, we're going to move on to, Dr. Foster, did you want to say something? Okay, we're going to move on to number 4A1, and that's Member Grover.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We have the not just workers' comp, I guess, but property, et cetera, and also workers' comp insurance renewal before us, and its recommendation is continue with Indiana insurance. And the bottom line shows, and I'm going to go right into a specific question here. The bottom line shows approximately $74,000 increase, which is 7.6% year to year, and more than half of that increase is in a $40,000 service fee, which we hadn't seen at least last year. I don't know if I can say before, but at least last year. This was in agreement. And I was wondering if, and I noticed that the other vendor that there's a comparison also has the service fee proposal of the same dollar amount. I wonder if we could have some explanation of what this is exactly, and if it's a new industry standard or just what it is. So.
Member Grover, if I could respond prior to turning it over to the representatives from RJF, who are acting as our insurance broker. We sent out 2 years ago a request for proposal for insurance broker services, and that was with the specific intent that the district would be best served by hiring a firm who can go out and search the entire market for us, checking into all of the available sources for underwriting our insurance policies, rather than approach it and then identify how they would approach it and identify how they would be paid a fee for those services. Obviously, there is a service there and a benefit to the school district. Many times in traditional insurance, when you work directly through agents or companies, there is somebody involved and they receive a commission directly from the insurance companies. We provided in our request for proposal an option for the school district to either pay a direct fee to our broker for their services and negotiate that service, or to allow them to receive a commission from the insurance companies. Pros and cons to that, as long as there's disclosure, I think it's on par and we can evaluate both. In this situation this year, we had an insurance company that approached the school district, another broker, I will call them, agent, that had a unique underwriter that only they could access. RJF could not access that company directly. So in order to have an apples-to-apples comparison, we asked them, instead last year, where Indiana provided a commission to them in the amount of $40,000, to lay that out as a separate line item this year so that we would be able to compare what that fee would be that would be paid to RJF, rather than through a commission direct from the insurance company as a direct pay. And so that's why you're seeing that we needed to extract that out of the policy premiums in order to show how it compared to this additional company that wanted to write our work, our policies. And with that, I'll turn it over to John Simonson and Bob St. John to provide you with some explanation on the rest of the results that we received through that process this year. I would start by saying that for the board members, relative to what you are seeing as some increase in both the property liability and workers' compensation, that net between those two, we did budget for increases, and our budget will be adequate to provide for these policy increases.
While John's passing the packets out, again, my name's Bob St. Arnold, and I'm with RJF Agencies. Our office is located here in Duluth, Minnesota, and we, as Carrie elaborated, were retained as the insurance broker to help place property liability, auto, umbrella, and workers' compensation for the district in 2009. So we've done that for the 2009, 10, 2010, 11, and what you have in front of you are the anticipated premiums for 2011 and 2012. In the left-hand side of your packet, for your perusal, I just wanted to elaborate on all the risk management services. Above and beyond placing the insurance, we help the district with claims advocacy. We help with loss prevention and safety services and HR consulting. That is part of what we do. To further elaborate on that, we've done a lot of safety training with your aides that are helping in the special ed area. We've done a lot of training with your custodial staff, with your bus drivers, and we've done a lot of work with the HR area and redesigning the policies and strengthening your return to work initiative. When people are injured, if we can get them back to work quicker, that helps control the cost of your workers' compensation premium. So on a quarterly basis, we're doing claim reviews to make sure that the claims are not over-reserved and it's keeping the premiums in check. So that was on the left-hand side of the packet. On the right-hand side of the packet, what I've prepared is a comparison of all the very first page shows you all the companies that we went to get proposals for your property, for your liability, your auto, and your umbrella. And we approached 7 different carriers. 6 of those carriers looked at last year's expiring premiums, just did not feel that they could compete. But as Carrie alluded to, there was a 7th insurance company that did decide to offer a proposal. We allowed that company extra time. We couldn't get their proposal in time for the business committee meeting, so we allowed an extra 2 weeks so that we could make sure that we looked under every single rock to make sure that we had the best proposals for the district. And after that other carrier was reviewed, the second attachment showing the 2011 Indiana versus the 2011 WRM proposal for property, crime, inland marine, your liability, your auto, your umbrella, and then treating RJF's compensation at $40,000 being equivalent between both companies. Indiana's proposal was slightly lower than Right Risk Management. We did not ask other carriers to solicit your workers' compensation this year. We just made a change last year from Liberty Mutual to RAS. That change saved the district $50,000 last year. They're doing a very good job of managing the injuries. They're doing a good job of controlling the claims. And we just don't want to get into the practice of putting that line of coverage out to bid every single year. We want to be strategic about when we go to market. And typically that's over a 3-year time period. About once every 3 years, we want to make sure that we're checking to make sure the district coverages and premiums are are in place. Builder's risk insurance, there's a note on that. You have to provide property insurance, but you also have to insure these structures as they're being constructed. The note says that we were waiting for Right Risk Management to give us a builder's risk quote. They did give us a quote today at 5 o'clock, and it's equivalent. I mean, the price is virtually identical to what you're paying with Indiana. We feel it's advantageous, though, to keep the property and the builder's risk with the same carrier. What Right Risk Management was proposing was placing that, dividing those two coverages out between two different companies, and that's a recipe, in our opinion, it's a recipe for disaster. We don't want the district caught in between two companies arguing over who's going to pay property damage to an existing structure versus a structure that's being constructed. So long and short of it is that we feel we've done a very adequate job of exploring the marketplace, looking at all the alternatives, and we feel that the premiums and the coverages that you have in place with the carrier right now with Indiana, that is our recommendation, is to renew the insurance with Indiana and to retain the workers' compensation with RAS. Last piece on work comp at the very end. With your workers' comp carrier, if you've taken the time to look at that, you'll see that the premium that RAS captures in 2010-2011 was $597,296, and then there are state taxes that the district has to pay. So the premium is actually going down on renewal to $595,000, but the reason that the comp is going up is because those state taxes are going up. So I know I've kind of ripped through that very quickly. Are there any other questions that John or myself can answer?
Chair Salita-Punko, members of the board, if I could just publicly thank RJF for their work and service to the school district. I especially appreciate, as you saw in their summary, the additional services that they've been provided. That is the type of work that we identified in their initial interview and proposal to the school district to provide broker services to the district. They brought that value added to the table, and I think they performed well on that. I also feel that bringing the additional company to us this year to consider for our property and liability was to the advantage of the school district. And however, even if all things were equal, I would say staying with Indiana this year, providing our workers' compensation through RAS, and also our builder's risk, as John indicated, that the builder's risk written by Indiana is definitely an advantage to us at this time. So both our property and liability as well as our builder's risk. And we are involved in a very complicated time, as you can imagine, with the level of construction that we've got going. So I think their recommendation is a good one, and that I would also endorse it on behalf of administration for the school districts and school board support.
Thank you, Mr. Leiter. Member Glass, no question?
Yes, Madam Chair. Could you tell us a little bit about how this coverage applies to the Voyagers bus company, where 2/3 of our busing applies to that, and whether or not you've participated in any training of their drivers?
You have hired and non-owned auto liability built into the district's package. So if their coverage is inadequate to respond to a liability claim, the district's auto liability and umbrella will ride over Voyager's policies. Their policies are going to be primary to respond to liability and also to physical damage on their units. We have not done any training. I take that back. When we did bus driver training, we've always coordinated that with the district's transportation supervisor. Now, whether or not he has invited the contract bus drivers into that training, I don't know that. I know that it has been done for district drivers, but I'm not sure if it has been done for the Voyager staff.
Do you have any feeling for the number of accidents that Voyagers has versus the number of accidents that the district buses have?
We could research that for you. All I have access to would be the auto accidents on the owned vehicles on the district fleet. We'd have to get that information from the hired bus contractor.
Okay, very good, thank you.
One more piece, just to confirm, board members, that our builder's risk premium is paid by our long-range facilities plan. It's not a general fund expense. So there is a $50,000 deposit premium, and any additional premiums paid per project that we have undertaken is not coming from the general fund. It is a long-range facilities plan expense. And I would also point your attention to our general liability and educators E&O. We do see about a $29,000 increase in premium there. Unfortunately, we did have a fairly bad experience relative to our losses in that category. There was a number of litigations that the district found themselves defending the last couple of years, and that experience starts to show up in premiums. Hopefully in the future, those litigations and lawsuits requiring defense tendered by our insurance companies would reduce, and that premium would again adjust itself.
Maybe, Carrie, maybe this is obvious, but I'll just want to just get this out there. So the builder's risk premium will go away as the long-range facility plan projects are completed in 2 or 3 years, whatever, right?
That's correct. Unless we have some additional construction and repair and maintenance, sometimes depending on the nature of it, we may want a separate builder's risk policy, but generally our annual maintenance and repairs is covered within our regular insurance.
So that's a routine type of coverage whenever we have building projects underway.
That's correct. It protects building materials not yet accepted by the district, but damaged by some type of incident or loss that either the contractor has no control over or that we cause.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, Member Grover, let's see. What were we on here? Is there any more questions on this item? No. Okay, we're going to move on to 4A2. Thank you, gentlemen. I'm sorry. I lost count where we were here. Okay, Member Johnston, you had this. You just wanted a separate vote on this?
That's correct.
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and vote on 4A.
Madam Chair.
Oh, I'm sorry, Member Casper.
How many true North AmeriCorps people will we have working or being a part of the district this year?
We budgeted 2 per elementary building for a total of 18.
So we're taking those 18 and spreading them equally across the district regardless of special needs or issues district-wide. So we're pretty much treating in this case, all 9 elementary schools equally with our AmeriCorps volunteers.
That is what the budget has reflected, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go ahead and vote on 4A2. So can I have a separate vote on that? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that carries unanimously. And then we're going to go to 4A3. Member Johnston, you wanted a vote on that one too? Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none, all those in favor of 4A3, vote aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that's also unanimously. And then we're going to move on to 4B, and it's all of it, right, Member Johnston? So this is yours. Go ahead.
Yeah, 4B, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, I've got some concerns, again, stemming from the meeting we had 2 weeks ago where we raised the long-range facility plan by $15.4 million. And I've got a question here for Mr. Leiter. every one of these items says at the end, has a dollar value which remains within the overall budget district-wide. We've had this verbiage ever since I've been on the board on everything. What does that mean? And please put it in the sense that since we were told that the cost went up 15.4, and we don't know, I don't know yet what all that is. Certainly part of it was put down as, it was at least alluded to us as increased cost of materials, etc. So please answer again, what does it mean when you say within the overall budget district-wide?
Member Johnston, members of the board, that line is intended to relate to the overall long-range facilities plan budget. I think one way which I could respond into what it means is if there wasn't a $15.4 million budget increase approved by the board, there would have been a point in time where we would not have been able to award change orders or contracts within the overall budget. I would have expected that the board would have been informed when we came to a point, just as the superintendent did in July of last year and again on the 27th of this past June, that there is a change in the overall plan cost that needed to be updated by the board. But that is what was intended by that line item there. It is true that as you get towards our last projects, that we would have been faced with not being able to say that.
Well, it has been said for the last, certainly before I got on the board. So my concern is that this was not true for the last year, at least a year and a half since I've been on the board. Isn't that an accurate statement? That it was not, when it was stated this, it was not in fact factual?
Member Johnston, I guess I don't know that is a representation that I would agree with. I think what I explained is that as we've been bringing these change orders and contracts to the board, they were within the overall budget. The individual projects, which I think the superintendent presented to you on the 27th, showed where individual costs by project, specifically the Grant and Congdon projects, have gone up quite substantially. And then there was also additional budget amounts for a number of other projects that started to exceed the individual project budgets. But we were still within the overall budget until we would have gotten to a point where we would have had to either change our designs for Grant and Congdon to stay within that, or have the effective increase as I think was presented to you on the 27th.
And Mr. Leiter, this is what I'm holding up here as the spreadsheet which you've been giving to us, Johnson Controls breakdown of costs. And in that it has all, I'm assuming all the costs that have went into all the various projects, from the elementaries, 4 of them which are now completed up to now. I went back a year ago on these, and there's been a total difference between 1 year and now of about $300,000. So obviously all these change orders that were coming in had been accumulated, I'm assuming accurately, on this sheet. So how, again, do you reconcile, there's been no changes for a year in this sheet, virtually no changes, yet we suddenly came up with a $14.5 million increase, and reconcile that with remains within overall budget. That clearly was known when this spreadsheet was developed, and has been this way for over a year.
Member Johnson, members of the board, the worksheet that you have in front of you, and I don't have it in front of me right now, I'd have to get into find that within the report, but it was my understanding, and it was the board's intent, that they wanted that worksheet to reflect the contracts that had been awarded, and those amounts, I believe, were the original contract awards, in order to reflect which contractors were from the local area versus outstate versus, there was 3 tiers, I think, that are reflected there. I'll have to look at it to see whether or not we've been updating that with change orders as contracts have been amended by change orders. I think it was just reflecting the original contract amounts, and it's been quite a while since we've awarded some substantial contracts. I think you're obviously awarding some tonight relating to the Eastern High School.
The only 2 that I'm aware of that I could note of was the St. Germain contract for the bell tower here and the asbestos in, I think it was East. Both of those came to somewhere around $400,000. That was the total changes I've seen within a year. So again, I will be asking more questions on this in the future.
Okay, we're going to move on to, let's see, it is, what is that, 5, we're on resolution. Oh no, I'm sorry, we did the resolution, we're on 6, informational now. And A is Member Johnston.
Yes. Let me help me find page 79 on this. Oh, here it is. Oh, okay, I got it here. This is on page 79. Thank you. Yeah, I had one question on the largest one, which is NAACP, on the Juneteenth celebration. Seems like a very good thing to support, but the question I had was, has this already happened? Is this an ongoing? Did this happen on June 19th, which was the day of emancipation? Or is this going on for a year? Just tell me a little bit about this contract.
It's been an annual event that the district participates in the past few years. On this particular agreement, I believe we have not made any payments yet, but the activity and event has occurred as you can see on June 19th. We're pending invoices from the organization before we make payment. I don't know if it's anything else you would like to...
Nothing for the
future. Oh, thank you. It sounds like a very good cause.
And there's nothing for the future. Whatever they had incurred as of June 19th will be what we'll pay.
Okay.
Okay, we're going to move on to 6D, and that is Member Casper.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Leiter, back to the seat. I'm just kidding. Could you update the board, and I know we have a little bit of information in here, are we on schedule on the 3 new grade schools and the refurbished high schools to open in 7 weeks?
Member Casper, members of the board, I am glad to report to you that I have heard and seen no change relative to something that would raise my level of concern that we would not be ready for the start of school. I actually have a report that was shared with the City of Duluth Building Safety Department, because we're working very close with the city at this time to make sure that our certificates of occupancy can be received, and part to allow us to get into the buildings, to move into them, to allow staff to get in and get ready, and then ultimately be ready for that start of school. And I have a checklist that was discussed with the city and updated today. We have been meeting with the city at our various school sites at least once a week. And Denfeld right now, we're looking at the auditorium in our south addition as having a temporary certificate of occupancy by August 3rd. And we're looking at administration moving into that space, the administrative offices, by August 8th. We are looking at the gym, locker rooms, and weight room having a temporary certificate of occupancy by the end of next week, in part to make sure that we can be prepared for the start of fall sports, which is going to happen at the beginning of the third week of August. The North Edition, or the Automotive Edition, we've already received a temporary certificate of occupancy for that space, and we've moved our equipment out of the Central High School vocational facilities and into that space. And then the remainder of the building, we're looking at having a temporary certificate of occupancy also by August 3rd. And our intent is that we will be in a position to allow the teachers to begin moving in August 22nd. I think we'll have the contents of their rooms already moved in by that date, but that would be the date when we would be able to allow them to come in and start to set up their classrooms and their spaces. And at this point, it appears that should be enough time. It's going to be a crunch. I mean, there shouldn't be any doubts we're going to be working right up to the last hour. This is a very big undertaking for everybody, not just our contractors, our construction managers, but our staff as well. We're going to all have to chip in and work together to make a successful outcome here. Eastern High School, we're looking at a temporary certificate of occupancy for our administration areas on August 2nd. And we're looking also at the administration moving into that building on August 8th. And at that time, we will be able to have the public come into that administrative offices through an entrance designated for that purpose so that we can begin registration. The rest of the building won't be available at that time for public occupancy, but we are looking at the remainder of the Eastern High School to have a temporary certificate of occupancy by August 16th to allow the teachers to also move in there by the 22nd. Laura MacArthur, we have received a temporary certificate of occupancy for Laura MacArthur on June 29th. We are moved into that building right now with the contents that have been moved across the street from the old building, and we are intending that administration is going to occupy the building beginning August 15th there. That's when the secretaries and principals come back, and the teachers would also begin active moving in on August 22nd. Lester Park Elementary School, we're looking at a temporary certificate of occupancy on July 26th. We're working towards that right now, and we're looking again as an elementary school August 15th for administration and teachers August 22nd. And the same dates apply to Piedmont that I just indicated for Lester Park. You might be aware there's been some question about our status relative to the state of Minnesota and some of our inspections that we cannot accomplish right now because of the status of the state budget. We believe that we will receive our temporary certificates of occupancy. We, in the case of an elevator, would not be able to use those elevators until they have been certified by the state inspector. And the same for our kitchens. And I think depending on when that decision needs to be made, we have been thinking about what our options would be in the case of food service. And but at this point, we're hopeful that when the state comes back to work, these inspections will occur in a timely manner to allow us to use those spaces as well. So that's in response to your question, Member Casper. I think that things are still looking good. And,
okay. I'm going to extract out a couple of questions.
We will probably have a couple of areas of construction activity. I think the board's aware of the status of the Eastern High School athletic field and stadium that will be under construction. I've asked the construction manager as recent as today to provide me with a plan that shows how we're going to create a safe separation of students from construction activity to make sure that we can get any equipment or materials in and out of that construction site and not in a manner that doesn't conflict with the school or the safety of students and staff and pedestrians in that area. I'm expecting to get that, and I know everybody is concerned about that, and we'll take all those proper precautions. We are also going to be very close with the completion of our underground stormwater retention systems at the Lester Park Elementary School. If you've been by that building recently, you've seen that the demolition has rendered the old building to a rubble pile that they're slowly hauling out of there. A little bit behind schedule on that because of some weather delays, but everybody is still confident that we're going to get that demolition completed and the construction of the stormwater system underway shortly. But we are expecting that there's going to be some remaining activity there, and again, we'll take whatever appropriate precautions are necessary to safeguard that construction activity and separate it from the students and the staff.
Okay, I'm going to ask a couple of more specific questions and related to that. Several board members received a laundry list, I guess you could say, from the activities director at East with regard to some locker room modifications and additional storage. Are we moving ahead with those things as well?
Member Casper, members of the board, we are moving ahead with some of the locker room modifications. We are moving forward to install a doorway in each of the Phi-Ed locker rooms that was not originally planned, that is intended to provide some flexibility for visiting teams and the management of events, which I think was the issue that raised concern. As far as storage, I think where we are today relative to the completion of construction and the ideas that are out there that might allow us to accomplish some expanded storage, my response would be that the cost to do it now versus later is not going to go up, and I think we would really like to see us get into that building and get a good feel for how it operates. I think there's always a lot of anxiety and anticipation of how things are going to work, because in a new building it will be a little bit different than where you were and exactly how things are going to be divided up. We are looking at putting some of our cabinets and equipment that we've salvaged out of other buildings into those storage areas. We put a priority on that, but right now our highest priority is certainly getting the buildings done. And I think some of the long-term conveniences and finishing storage rooms and spaces we can accommodate and accomplish after we're in school and know that school is starting on time.
The gymnasium floor for the new Eastern High School, is that ready for use?
You're referring to the Eastern High School?
Yes.
I am not sure that the board was made aware of this, but it's similar, and it is a bigger item in our school that's being constructed, but on an ongoing basis there is construction that is completed or begins and it's rejected because of something that doesn't meet the specification. There was a situation relative to the wood floor at that gymnasium that ultimately led to a rejection of the floor that was about 1/3 installed. The wrong materials were shipped to begin with. The contractor tried to use those materials. We allowed them to try. Unfortunately, the effort didn't meet our expectations. I can report to you today that the replacement material has been received and the floor is completely installed relative to the hardwood. It has received one coat of finish. There was work taking place over the weekends in 24-hour shifts to get that work on track and on schedule. It's been reported to me that fortunately the company that's installing the wood floor is also the company that's involved with the bleacher system, and they're working together to make sure that they can get those bleachers in as soon as possible. It looks at this time that we will be close to having that floor ready for the beginning of the fall sports. But until I see it painted and finished, I guess we still have the fallback plan, which we actually originally started to plan that we weren't going to be able to have fall sports at that facility and that we were going to need to use Central High School for volleyball and some of the other activities that require a gym, as well as football, which we know is going to be there because the field won't be ready. But there's a chance at this point that the floor will be done and we might be able to start our fall sports there.
Okay. Exactly leading to my next question. Then I've been contacted by a couple of parents, girls volleyball specifically, that would use that gym. And my latest discussion with them, which was a couple of weeks ago, was that they were instructed by I'm not sure who, that they would need to go out and purchase portable standards for their volleyball at their own expense to the booster club for girls volleyball to go out and purchase several $1,000s worth of portable standards. Is that true?
Member Casper, members of the board, I don't believe that is true. I believe that the sleeves that go into the floor are provided and that the standards and nets are also provided for that system.
I think that
I'll confirm that, and unless there is some other part of the apparatus for practices or something that I'm not aware of, as I understood that is entirely the system required for volleyball is provided.
Well, and I think it was related to, at that time, the gym not being finished and them having to be at an outside site. And at that time, I think they were under the impression that they were going to Woodland. And maybe now that isn't the case, but if we could get clarification, or if I could get clarification so I could report back to those folks, if that isn't the case, if they're now out shopping to spend several $1,000s on equipment that they now don't need, if you could look into that for me and let me know on that.
I will certainly do that. That's the first I had heard that Woodland was going to be a site selected for volleyball. It was my understanding that Central was going to be used, and we certainly know Central has volleyball equipment there, as Denfeld does. So when Denfeld is in the Denfeld gym, they have the equipment they need. There should be an additional set of equipment up at Central for purposes of East High School's practice, if it's required.
And, it's all rumor, so I guess if you could clarify that for me so I can report back to them. I'd like to just ask a couple more questions. Piedmont, I notice we're spending some additional money, not much, but we're putting in crosswalks across Ensign. I know we spoke a month or so ago that we were in further negotiations with the church regarding the property acquisition in that area, and I'm just looking for an update. Are we moving ahead with a crosswalk and a sidewalk to the soccer field on the other side of the church, or are we moving ahead with modifications to that site?
Member Casper, members of the board, I am hopeful that in August we will be bringing to you a recommendation or a proposal for a transaction purchase agreement with the church. We have had a number of conversations and back and forth proposals and counter proposals in order to come to terms that we felt as administration we could recommend to the school board. And unfortunately we weren't in a position to make that recommendation this month, so it would be next month before we'd be able to do that. I believe ultimately a crosswalk is going to be required on Ensign. It doesn't appear that the parking lot acquisition is going to be in the best interest, but as I indicated, we're still working on those final details.
Okay. On to Laura Mack. How are we doing with the construction, the joint project between Valley Youth and ISD 709 in the city of Duluth to create the community center aspect of the building?
The agreements are signed. We are working currently to make the final arrangements for the process for transferring the dollars once work is completed so that we receive the money from that grant. We have retained the architectural firm DSGW on a lump sum fee to do the design work. They've already had a meeting with the user groups, which is the Valley Youth, Svenda, and also representatives from the school district to define the scope of work, to begin the definition of scope of work. And as soon as the plans are complete to a point where we can begin some construction, our intent is to utilize hourly contracts that the district has for carpentry, plumbing, electrical, the other trades required in this case. We've reviewed that with the city. They've looked at our request for bids where we took those hourly contracts. I think everybody's in agreement that that's going to provide us with the most expedient approach to completing that work on an hourly contract basis. So it is underway, and I would expect that towards the end of this month or early August, we're going to start seeing construction in that area.
So that won't be done by the time school starts, right? I wouldn't assume so.
I would say that's a safe assumption.
So are we in discussions then with Valley Youth, because Lower Mac's coming down, the old Lower Mac is coming down. Valley Youth is currently housed somewhere else, but obviously when the school opens, with providing of food and all sorts of things, are we in discussions with providing them some temporary space at that school till construction is complete? Or what are we doing to accommodate their needs specific to this delay, I guess, so.
Member Casper, members of the board, I don't have an answer for that. I haven't been a participant in any conversations with Valley Youth relative to where their temporary occupancy would occur. I don't know that we would have space in our Laura MacArthur building, but I haven't had that conversation with the building principal either, so I can't answer that for sure.
Okay. Could you check into that for me? And my last question, Lester Park, you and I had met on site, and member Saliga-Punko as well, and toured the building, and we looked at the outside of the old building and the Lester Park sign and some of the ornate scroll work and things like that. Has a plan been developed on where those are going to be located at the new school?
Member Casper, members of the board, that is our intent. We were successful. It was really a tight timeline to salvage that sandstone. We utilized the expertise of what is one of our community's local experts in salvaged architectural antiques relative to stones and buildings, Bob Swanson, and he worked with our utility crew. We were able to get that out. Our intent is to try to incorporate it into some portion of the landscape at the the Lester Park School. Exactly where hasn't been determined, but we have the option based on the fact that it was salvaged.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, let's see. We want to go on to the next one. This would be
Madam Chair.
6. Oh, I'm sorry. Member Wasson, I'm sorry.
Mr. Leiter, I just have a favor at some point in the next month. If you and maybe, I'm assuming like Katie Kaufman and principals could let the board know when you might be planning public events for tours of the buildings, and whenever, we're on a crunch, and if it's in October, that's fine, but folks have been asking somewhat, and I know we'll advertise those things, but...
It hasn't been confirmed yet, but there's been discussions and communications with principals that we're tentatively looking at September 17th, which is a Saturday, week following the first week of school, that people felt we would have been settled in, that the newness for the parents and students would have passed, but a Saturday would be a good opportunity to have an open house for the general public at all 5 of our new sites. So as soon as that date can be confirmed, then we will communicate it formally on our website and with the media, but that's the tentative date that we're looking at now.
Thank you, Mr. Leiter. Okay, we're going to move on to 6E, and that's Member Johnston.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yeah, this is back on page 130, and these are the sheets that Mr. Leiter and I talked about, the Johnson Controls, that kind of supplier, these are contractor and supplier reports, but it also was a part of the update of Johnson Controls. And Mr. Leiter, I've got a question on this, and say, for example, we've got about 4 schools that have been completed: Homecroft, Lowell, Lakewood, and Stoll. All elementary ones that were the smaller projects that were started here a couple of years ago. I'm using those just because those are completed. On the first page, we've got the cost of Lowell being about $5.1 million. But yet, on the cost of the summary cost status report that was handed out at the meeting 2 weeks ago, it has the cost of Lowell as being $7.1 million, or about $2.1 million higher than what's indicated here. Now, I'm assuming that since this sheet that we're looking at here, this one, is mainly contractors in the building part, I'm assuming that other $2.1 million is based out of the cost of the A&E contracts, the actual site administration, the construction management, and is that correct, or is there other items there that we're not aware of?
Member Johnston, I think looking at that same sheet, page 131, the second line up from the bottom, site superintendent, that is a line item cost in this. But I think there was a question earlier today about Bossart and checks being written directly to them. There is considerable general expenses that are paid that are not reflected in these sheets here. These are sheets that relate to individual contracts that the board or the superintendent or director of business services based on resolution have approved. It does not include all of the other, we'll put them in the category of soft costs, which you indicated would include the architectural, the program management, some of the construction management fees that are outside of the site superintendent, but it doesn't include the cost of temporary heat, snow removal, refuse removal, temporary construction fencing. So there's considerable amount of additional expenses beyond what's shown on these sheets that relate to the total dollar values that you're seeing in the budget summary sheet.
Okay, again, for example here, these costs are about 61% of the total cost, which I'm assuming is somewhat accurate on that cost status report, which puts the cost of Lowell at $7.1 million. So this other money here, we were trying to find some way to see how much money was going into Duluth contractors versus non-contractors. That was originally what this was put together for, which has worked fine. But we've got of these 4 schools, only the 4 schools, we've got anywhere from 39 to 42% of those costs are going all under these other costs. So that's a big chunk of money, which again, any guess on how much those went to local contractors? Again, I'm sure you don't have this, but I'm just trying to find here, again, there's a big difference here in the money that's being portrayed and the money that's actually we've supposedly spent. And again, I want to ask for an answer, but I know you don't have it. But yet it certainly begs a question.
I think that's a fair question. The professional services agreements, I think you're aware of those and where the architectural engineering firms are coming from. I would venture that a majority, I think it's safe, of the other expenses are relating to local. We purchase our electricity, we receive the fuel for temporary heat. the refuse disposal obviously wouldn't be shipped out of the cities or something. So most of our additional expenses are coming from firms that probably are considered local or resources that are considered local. But that's as specific as I could be. I think it is appropriate or safe to say that there's a majority of that from the local sources.
This does not include change orders also.
And Kevin's, Mr. Strong's pointing out to me that the sheet you're seeing does not include change orders. Those are the original contract amounts.
Okay, but these are updated every month.
Updated to the extent that we've awarded new contracts. It's not updated to reflect change orders that have been awarded. You certainly see the change orders either in the summary of those that have been approved by the superintendent or director of business services, or that the board takes on directly. You see those on a monthly basis.
But I picked out these 4 particular schools because they are done.
Right, but we haven't included change orders. Those are the original contract amounts.
Okay, well, why are we giving an update every month then if it's not being updated?
It is being updated, Member Johnston, with regard to any new contracts. When we bring contracts to you, for example, if it's not on here, the contracts that you approve tonight would show up next month under the contracts that were awarded for the Eastern High School.
Well, for the last year and a half, we've been asked to approve lots of change orders, and again, I found 2 change orders in the last year that have been reflected on this sheet, and certainly there's been a lot more than that, and particularly on the schools that are already done. I mean, why isn't this updated then as it should be? I mean, what is the cost of these things? And what I'd like to find out is, again, also I would assume also some of these costs are going to contract administration, which is also going to Johnson Controls and Hussard and Cross Anderson. I forget who is the generals on these.
Member Johnston, I guess without seeing exactly where those change orders are, I can't comment, but I would appreciate it if you would be willing to review that with me, and I can see if there is some way to improve this report for the school board in that way.
Yeah, I'll get together with you later, and again, the reason, again, Stoll is off by 4.4 million. Homecroft or Lakewood is off by 2.9 million. Homecroft is off by don't have the total. Looks like about 2 million as well. So again, why am I bringing these up? Because suddenly we're asking. We know that there has been cost increases here. I'm trying to find out where those are, and so I will talk to you later about that as well. And maybe this is the time to bring up again that I have had a request for information out to you, Mr. Leiter, again from July 1st, asking for details on this 15.4 million. Again, since all these questions are coming up now, this is why I'm asking these questions, because hopefully there's some answer here. I'm assuming there is here, but right now the numbers that I have aren't jiving. So again, I will talk to you later about it.
Dr. Foster, did you want to say something?
Yeah, yes. Members of the board, Mr. Johnson, one of the things that I've done in the last couple of weeks is assembled a long-range facilities planning advisory group, and it consists of Carrie, the 2 bills, and also Katie. We're looking very specifically at what needs to be done to make sure all of the schools are open on time. And in the fall, we're looking at finances. The question that you have with regards to the $15.4 million, what those costs look like specifically, and how to better report that information to the board. We would entertain Carrie and I sitting down with you so that we can look at suggestions that you or any of the board members have with regards to trying to address the request and/or concerns you have, and better provide that information so we can create a more expedient presentation here at the board. I agree with what you're saying. If you have questions about information, that if it's not presented to you in a way that might be responsive to your needs, we want to hear that from all of the board members. And while we have many things to do here in the district, certainly we want to make that a priority and hopefully be responsive to your requests. So we meet on a weekly basis. And so if we can meet with you, I would say in short order, and hear whatever your concerns or your suggestions might be, then we can incorporate that in our meetings and perhaps be more responsive.
Thank you. That will be a good start, and again, we'll get together with you after the meeting here and try to get a date there. Appreciate it much.
Okay, I'm going to go to Member Casper.
I too want to express some dismay, having looked at that monthly and assumed that those were the totals of the costs. Now we hear that there's other costs that aren't in that. Well, having been involved in construction for 16 years or so in a professional capacity, I've always been under the understanding that any cost related to construction is the cost of construction, not, oh, that wasn't, or this is different. That's in engineering costs or design costs. It's all part of the construction of that project. So I'm sitting here listening to it a bit in dismay as I've monthly looked at that and thought, oh, we're doing pretty good. Oh, well, and to find out that it's not accurate. And so my hope is that with that we're going to see those accurate numbers that are maybe more reflective of the true costs of these projects. So thank you.
Once again, I'd say to all of the board members, Mr. Casper, any suggestions or concerns that you might have with perhaps how we might present this to you in a different type of a format so that the information you're seeking, we can modify our presentations, we'd be very open to that. And as I said before, we meet on a weekly basis, so if you want to email it to me, stop and talk to us after a meeting, but we would like to have those requests in writing so that we can review and be responsive to you.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Okay, we're going to move on. I would like to not have to take a break, so let's just keep moving on. 6F, and that is Member Johnston. If you have anything else, which kind of relates.
Just a question here, Mr. Leiter. This is change order approval information, given for information that now some change orders that are earlier in the committee report. We've already talked about some of those. No, there's a bunch of other change orders. What's the difference? Why are these ones here and the other ones there?
Member Johnston, the school board authorized by resolution the Director of Business Services or the superintendent to approve change orders within 15% of the original contract value. Where the total of change orders exceeds 15%, they come to the school board. And so that's the difference. The report you're seeing at the end are change orders that have been approved by the superintendent or director of business services. The ones that you see on your agenda tonight for action are relating to contracts where the total value of change orders has exceeded 15%.
Okay. I thought there was probably some dollar value there that triggered this, but what you just said triggers something else. If there was a change order of 15% or greater, which we've just done some here today, isn't that going to impact the overall budget? And how could that then be within the overall budget if it was been a 15% increase?
There are construction contingencies planned in the budget, and change orders are approved within those construction contingencies. And I think even in the project cost summary sheet that you were provided, there's also a line in there that you can see construction contingency, and as change orders are approved, that construction contingency amount is reduced and it's moved from the construction contingency into the committed cost.
Okay, thank you for now. We'll pursue it in the future.
Okay. Go ahead.
In case we have other questions regarding the long-range facilities plan, finance costs, those types of questions, perhaps I could allay your concerns and say to you or to all board members that some of the things that you're discussing here tonight is the first time that I've heard those things, and I would appreciate having an opportunity by all board members if you would bring those concerns and or questions to me prior to a board meeting. Perhaps we can be responsive and get that information to you. I do understand that there are times when things come up at the very last moment, and it's timeliness that we need to have some discussions about that. But as I've said to the board early on and will consistently say, we want to be responsive to the Board of Education. And I think that if you bring those questions and or concerns to myself and the administration, we're going to make every effort to get that information to you prior to a regular board meeting. Other opportunities would be to discuss more in detail at our committee meetings. But I'm going to be meeting, as I said, to board members on a regular basis each month. And so, again, as you have concerns, suggestions, recommendations about how to improve effectiveness and efficiencies, I think a big step of that is for us to have concerns prior to coming to meetings, because a lot of this information we certainly want to have to you before a meeting so that you can make informed decisions. So, thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Okay, we're going to move on to the last item, 6H, and that's Member Johnston again, update on the state budget.
Yeah, since there's a lot of hiccups moving on, just asking if anybody's got the latest update here. I know something was supposed to have happened on Monday. I heard that didn't happen. Any updates for us on the board and the public here that could do anything?
I can share with you that the special session was convened this afternoon at 3 p.m. I did receive a call from Ron Soberg this morning that the K-12 education bill was, I'm going to say finished or agreed to, let's say, at 3 a.m. Earlier this morning. I kept looking for details of the bill on the website for the House, and it was not posted prior to coming into this meeting, along with the Health and Human Services bill, which are the two most significant spending bills. And so we're missing, the detail of what ultimately was agreed to, so I can't update you on that. I think that, again, at the committee meeting, we did talk about the holdback most probably going to 40%. I think that's safe to say that's been agreed to. I think it's relatively safe to say that the formula is going to go up by $50 in both years. But going beyond that, I guess I would just tell you that I'm looking to see the details, and I'll share those with you in a summarized form as soon as we can get them and process them, through our own understanding. So.
And board, I'm hoping to bring back some information for you this evening or tomorrow morning. I'm supposed to drive to the Twin Cities for the MASA conference, the workshop primarily for new superintendents, and so won't be the buzz on everybody's mind is, where's our money? That's my question. I'll be chiming over and over, where's our money? Where's our money? So hopefully I'll have some information to report on you.
Okay, I think we need to vote on the entire business committee. Is that where we are, Member Grover? I kind of forgot. I think that's where we are. Okay.
Chair Saliga-Punko?
Yes.
I have one item just to clarify and make sure that everybody understands. Item 4A1 is as presented on the information that was sent to you and also included in your folders tonight, as opposed to what's written in the agenda materials themselves. So just please know that as you're voting tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Hanson. Okay, do you have one more item? Member Johnston?
Just a discussion.
You had a question, Member Johnston? Or?
No, I have a discussion on the, I think there was a motion on the floor on the business committee.
I think it's been moved by Member Grover, and so we have to have it seconded, correct? Or did we already? Oh, we did. It was seconded by Member Casper, that's right. Okay, so now we can have more discussion? So we've had quite a bit of discussion. Go ahead.
Again, I want to express to the board, some of the board is probably noticed, and the public here, that I have been voting for this business committee report the last several months, which was a change. Again, I thought that things were getting a little bit better. It appeared that we were having a better transparency. It appeared that I thought at the time that the red plan was coming in under budget, and I would say, okay, I guess I got to admit that and go ahead. At this point, I'm going to be telling the board I'm going to be voting against this report again, and the reason why is that, again, I had some of these questions here. Again, I brought up questions in the past about, I think that things should be signed, whatnot. And again, just want to express to the board here that unfortunately I feel I will have to be going back to voting against this report.
Okay, go ahead, Dr. Foster. Okay.
Well, I appreciate those comments, Mr. Johnson. Certainly, I think sitting and working with you and all of the board members, we certainly want to garner your support for financial report and all of the business here with the school district. And I think sitting down and working together, realistic about all of the things that we have, we've got a big challenge on our hand with trying to open up these schools and just be preparing for the new school. And so we definitely will be working hard to garner the support of you and of all of the board members, but that's going to require us all working together collaboratively as we work towards the same goal, what's the best interest of our district and our students. So we look forward to working with you on this.
Thank you, Dr. Foster. Okay, we're going to vote on the entire business committee minus the resolutions that we already approved and the other two items, the True North and health and safety training. So, the entire business committee, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay, so that carries 5-2 with members Glass and Johnston voting against it. Okay, and we are basically done, except I know we have member Glass wanted to say something at the end. Go ahead.
I'm into item number 11, other questions and others. My first item pertains to the RFPs that we have out to the public for the excess property and the buildings that we've asked for proposals to be submitted by the 14th of July, and that date has been moved to the 28th of July. I wanted to simply ask the question, in those requests for proposals, the proposition was stated that the proposers cannot use the property for a K-12 educational purpose. And I think that we ought to reconsider that if the board ever did approve that for these particular properties, because what we learned on the 27th of June is we have to further discount what we're expecting to receive for those properties by another 25% almost. And so instead of getting 30 cents on the dollar for properties that in their present use have a $100 million value, we're going to settle for 20 cents on the dollar, which is even more ridiculous. So if there were a proposer out there who is presently using former district buildings for their purpose, it would seem to me that we're not being too smart to not include their proposals also. So I wanted to at least bring this up to you because we do have some very nice buildings that could be used for educating Duluth kids that have chosen not to use the Duluth school system and are presently operating out of former Duluth school buildings. And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to do that in the future if it will pay us more money and these kids will get a better education. Just makes more sense to me. So that's the first item I would say. I would question the fact that these RFPs were issued without board approval, and there's an item in there that will potentially take away money that the board could use. So that's the first item. Does anyone have any comments on that?
Okay, Member Grover, go ahead.
There is a policy which the board, of course, by majority vote can suspend regarding the selling of no longer used or needed properties, school buildings, primarily to outside entities. The basic reason for that policy, which has been in place since I believe it was when Dr. Nolan was superintendent, whatever time period that was, 94, 95, somewhere in there, 93, 92, 94 it was. Anyway, that policy, there's a contradiction between Member Glass, between what you're suggesting and our efforts to increase our market share, I guess is the term we've been using lately. It would be kind of shooting ourselves in the foot in a way to, with one hand, and on the one hand, try to attract students to ISD 709, and on the other hand, sell excess buildings to arguably our competition. So that's the basic reason for that policy. But again, the board, on a case-by-case basis, the board can suspend that policy if majority agrees it's appropriate. That was done with two separate sites back in about 1993-94. The old Lakeside School was sold to St. Michael's School, and the old Lowell School on Central Entrance was sold to the Lakeview Christian Academy. So that can be done. There is precedent for doing it, but I think the administration, which I don't agree that they were bound to not send out the RFPs without board approval. I think that was well within their administrative discretion, and they will of course bring those RFPs to us with recommendations for action when that time comes. But they were bound to advertise what district policy is for use of these buildings. It would be inappropriate for them not to have made that clear what district policy is.
Thank you, Member Grover. Okay, you have something else, Member Goff?
Yes, I have one other concern about this particular item. I did bump into the mayor, and he expressed concern that the board at least consult with the city concerning these use of this property, because the city has certain additional responsibilities, and he wants to make sure that the community is also on board with whatever future uses might be being proposed. And so he would like to be included in the considerations, because there would be a zoning change in every case. If you're not going to use that property for a school, it would have to be rezoned to whatever the new use would be. And the mayor would want to make sure that the community would be on board with that. At least that's the message that he gave me.
I would like to see a formal written request from the mayor detailing why he should be included in that decision-making process, and I'd like to see it come to the full board with a copy to the superintendent, or to the superintendent and a copy to the board. Either way.
Sure.
I'm going to be, as one of the efforts to get out and establish relationships and partnerships in the community, I'm going to be meeting with the mayor and a number of other stakeholders in the community next week, and so I will convey the board's request for a formal letter regarding his concerns and on issues. I imagine his concern has to do with economic development and how it impacts the city and services. But we'll have a brief conversation since you brought that up here, and then also have him to share his thoughts in writing with the full board.
Great, great.
Member Gorman, you wanted to address that?
Yeah, I do recall in looking at the RFP as published in the newspaper that there was something in there specific to the Central High School STC site regarding, this would be based on some, I guess, preliminary discussions between the district and the city, but there was something in there about proposers would be asked or maybe asked to enter into discussions with the city of Duluth and DEDA, Duluth Economic Development Authority, which is an entity of the city, as part of this whole thing. So at least at that site, I'm not sure what those discussions have been taken place, at least on a preliminary basis. So, and I'm sure Dr. Foster will be. That will be part of what he discusses with Mr. Ness.
Well, I just want to make the point, too, the city has the power to change zoning or give variances to different zoning regulations. So we can't do it, they can. Member Glass, do you have something else?
Yes, I had 4 other specific items that I can bunch into one, given the conversations that we've had, and they all originate from the meeting we had on June 27th, to which I had a 30-minute notice. But there were a number of things that came out of that meeting that still are unknown to me. The information that Member Johnston has been asking for as to what the $15 million is going to be used for is clearly one of the things that I would like to know the details of. Secondly, where that money is going to come from, how is it going to be generated from the tax rolls was not clearly explained, and a whole variety of other things which go to the financing of that, plus the decisions that why were those items the best choices never were discussed by this board, and we were given a choice of only 15 items, $15 million worth of items or $34 million worth of items, and never did have a good discussion as to maybe there were additional things that should be in that 15 rather that weren't in there. And so I was not at all satisfied that that meeting was conducted in a way that was in any way constructive. So I would just say that we have more work to do to put a proper end on this red plan to make sure that it is the best that this school board can do.
Thank you, Member Glass. I just want to remind board members too, it's really good because we do get updates from the superintendent's office on Thursdays or Fridays, or both days, weekly. So we do have an obligation as school board members to make sure we check our email to find out about those items that might occur, different information items. So, Member Johnson, you have one more thing?
Just to comment a little bit on what Member Glass mentioned and the superintendent mentioned. Again, I'd really encourage interaction with the city. One time, I don't know if we still have it, but we had an intergovernment committee, which I remember I used to be part of. I don't know if that's even there anymore, but again, it's really volunteer to work on that if there's anything that the board can do to do that outreach to our other stakeholders, particularly as disposing our schools, which I think we should really start talking about. I would like to comment one more thing on the meeting on the 27th. Again, at the time, as far as I know, almost none of us knew that there was even going to be a resolution introduced, not to mention the money amount. And at the time, I came in here without anything, thinking this was going to be a little happy meeting, goodbye to Mr. Dixon type of thing. I didn't have the citations of the violations that occurred. I mentioned them, and I think it's important to tell the board again here is that 2 violations that we did. One, it's School Board Policy 8090, preparation for a meeting, which states, quote, pertinent information concerning items on the agenda shall be mailed 3 days prior to the meeting for careful study by each member. We did not even get the one resolution until an hour into the meeting. We weren't even given that information at the start of the meeting. Another policy that was violated was Policy 8100, adequate information to proceed action, which states all pertinent information relative to the items on the agenda shall be made available to the school board in written form for their study prior to the meeting, not an hour into the meeting. And again, I wanted to put those citations on here. We're hoping that we can avoid that for the amount of money that was spent. Yeah, it's caused a lot of consternation by this board and certainly destroyed the little working relationship that we were working on. I'm hoping we can make amends.
Okay, Member Grover, you have one last thing?
I move adjournment.
Okay, I'm adjourning this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, board.